They say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The problem with that saying is that who is the beholder and why does the beholder have so much power? Now, when one contemplates about the standards of beauty, certainly one thing is obvious. Regardless of where we look at in history of humankind, we can always find some people who were measured or perceived to be or called as to be more beautiful than others, which means there is certainly, as long as humans existed, there has been some sort of a ranking of the looks. But and even with consideration of how those standards and rankings change between people, between cultures, one of the things that I find massively problematic is that those things aren't truly reflective in the age of advertisement, and certainly in the age of the technology, we see that those standards of beauty tend to be boiled down to a similarity that we can see when one observes the universal pageants, or one could say the Miss Universe. And although what I'm talking about is not in any way unique or new, nevertheless, you would think that in this day and age we would be stepping away from the standardized beauties of the either perspective of television or mass media, and we would be able to recognize that each of the cultures and societies that ought to be represented within such a pageant as a Miss World or Miss Universe, which in itself should be reflective of those cultural standards. And here's the harsh reality. And maybe what I feel is only something that I feel, but I also think that it's probably shared. Why is it that we have this feeling that unless we conform to those universal standards, all of a sudden the standards of beauty are not going to be acceptable? Very similar to sort of music, and one could say, well, we have this big notion of accepted music format, and then we have this French music format, and whenever those formats are in conflict with one another, they're always put in a scale of one towards the other, and those who are considered to be superior are usually praised over those that are considered to be cool or maybe even cliche. And in those gradings and standard applications, all of a sudden we then have music that was acceptable, but then it goes mainstream, and then we lose our liking of it. But by that time nobody cares, because all of a sudden the originality has been lost, and everybody sounds like some sort of a pop song on auto tune. And unfortunately, if that happens with music, and it probably happens with all the other different kinds of forms of art, I can even understand that and even accept it to a certain degree, but I think it's absolutely saddening that it happens with humans. So all of a sudden, some standard of beauty that might not be normative, whether that be having to do with the waist size or the facial contours or even expressions, or our eyes, and even the way people, the usual body types that would be considered beautiful in other parts of the world and in other cultures, all of a sudden get completely stripped out and moved away. And what we see is a beauty pageant where all 50 or 100 or how many ever contestants are, they look almost identical, with few differences of having different skin hues. But by and large, even the way they move, even the way they all are or sharing the same dominant characteristics that are pushed upon them. And I think that's both saddening and it's problematic, because I'm not saying that we will never have the standards of beauty, but I think we should be more respectful of our own standards, and not be falling to the trap of advertisement that forces the uniformity upon us. Because when it does, all of a sudden, all we start to have is what the popular songs are, right? Like whatever, slim waist, pretty face, and a bing bang. And that in itself is a standard, and I don't think we should push it upon people.